came up with the negative math so far. It's not bad. Okay.
Good afternoon, or morning, I guess it still is, but I'm Michael Burns, Chair of the Moorhead EDA, and I call the meeting to order. And if you'll read the roll.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Members present today are Nate Anderson, Michael Burns, Violet Delkey, Heidi Durand, Zach Hiring, Pat Kovash, John Rogala, Jeff Shawman, Bobby Soline, and Deb White.
Thank you. Any agenda amendments?
None at this time.
Thank you. Minutes from last meeting. Discussion.
Chair, I move to approve the minutes from October 7th.
Second.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Hearing none, the meeting minutes from October are approved. Are there any citizens wanting to address the board? Moving right along. Commissioners' reports.
Time for the annual MBA update here. Our Let's Talk Business meets Wednesday at 7 at the Moorhead Frying Pan. Our guest speaker this Wednesday is Rob Grammer with the Moorhead Youth Hockey. So it's going to be exciting with a new addition to the hockey arena. And a reminder, the Cullen Hockey Center ribbon cutting is at Friday at 4:30. So it'd be nice to see as many of us there as we can. Pretty exciting ribbon cutting. So there's still time to register for the MBA annual meeting. It will be held on November 14th at the Courtyard by Marriott. If you're interested in attending, please register online or reach out to Sherry at the MBA. Our guest speaker is Brian Cole with the Moorhead Public Schools, and Master of Ceremonies is Patrick Kirby. The annual Winter Wonderland Frostival scheduled for February 1st at the Yumcump. The Frostival committees are preparing for a week of events, and they're excited to announce that the Moorhead American Legion, the Cullen Hockey Center, and Heralds on Main are all going to be kind of doing special events. So, we're starting to get this built and get more of it to spill over into Moorhead. And then just a little note, if you've been kind of watching on First Avenue, you're going to see a couple of changes, and we have a public hearing on Wednesday, and we're going to, we have some pending news that's going to be coming. And we've recently, Kovash Rentals, we've acquired the Minn Kota Recycling Center, and that building is going to be down. And we reached an agreement with the city to still work on the recycling, so we're going to still have the dumpsters out there. You're not going to be able to bring your aluminum cans in and get money, but we really feel that having a recycling component in that area is kind of nice because, there's gaps, and Moorhead's a recycling community, and we want to make sure that that's available for the people.
Yeah, Heidi.
Thank you. Pat, is there a place where people will still be able to bring their cans? Because I do know there are a lot of nonprofits that get funds from people donating their cans. So
I think they have dumpsters there where they're going to put them, and then if not, you'd have to take them to the Fargo one. Minn Kota is the one that picks up all the dumpsters anyway, according to my discussions with Steve. So, but we just really want to make sure that we make it as easy as to recycle for everybody, and that's how we get more recycled. So,
Thank you. Any other further discussion? Okay, moving on. Rebecca Peterson, who is the Director of Development of the West Central Initiative, is here with us to
You'll have to have my copy.
update
Dana.
us.
I didn't bring it up. Well, thank you for having me back. I thought it'd be nice to visit with you one more time before I present to the City Council next week. And I wanted to give you some updates after I had a chance to meet with Christina Volkers and some of the things about having a West Central Initiative. I know we've been working closely with some of your staff. Before we get to that, though, I'd like to invite you to our annual meeting, which is next Wednesday, this Wednesday. Our special guest is Kevin Kling. We're calling this the Year of the Story, so there's some information about that. It's at Thumper Pond. I wish it were closer for all of you. Next year we'll have to be closer to Moorhead, I promise. A few things that have come up since I was last here, and I wish I could have brought some of my colleagues with me, but I'll do my best to bring them into the room. Anna Wasesha, our president and CEO, has been working with the other initiative foundations to create an Initiators Fellowship. We had 18 applicants, and so between West Central Initiative, the Initiative Foundation, and Southwest Initiative Foundation, we're awarding 7 fellowships. 2 of the applicants were from Moorhead. I can't tell you who the winners are, but we'll know tomorrow. So be looking for a press release, so I wanted to let you know about that. Also, last week, we had a Meet the Mayors meeting at West Central Initiative, and your mayor, Jonathan Judd, was there for part of the time. On Friday, Anna and a couple of my colleagues met with Mayor Judd. He's going to be working with us on putting together a focus group here in your community. We're working with the McKnight Foundation on their new priorities and initiatives. They've just announced that they're cutting the funding to the initiative foundations by half. So that'll happen in the next 3 years, so we're working hard on that. However, their 2 new priorities are climate change and diversity, equity, and inclusion. So we know our work will align with their work going forward. Also, greetings from our planner, Jill Amundson. She just wants to compliment you on the work that you're doing with the Business Retention and Expansion Planning Grant. And she was able to attend one of your community meetings, and she said it was so well organized. Your consultant is doing a great job, and she really loved the impact that that's going to have on your decision-making. Also, our early childhood and initiative folks are working very closely with your early childhood programs here. They're looking at providing parenting classes to the Bright Sky Apartments, and they're working with the Circle of Parents on that initiative. And they're also working with your library on a bookmobile project. So greetings from all my colleagues, and those are our updates since I last met with you. I believe at the last meeting, I thank you for your ongoing support and your continued support. And I've met with your city manager, and she supports our request for a slight increase in funding. You've been doing $15,000, and we've asked for $15,500. So I defer to staff for their recommendations, but we had a great conversation about future projects and future plans to work together between the City of Moorhead and WCI.
Mr. Chair. Thanks, Rebecca. Thanks for coming again. As you know, the preliminary budget was set already, and then we're going to do the final budget at our next meeting. I think it's the first meeting in December. In between, we have found, one of you pointed out, Jeff, I think that we double counted the MBA membership, so there is a little bit of leeway in the budget. I will be adjusting the final budget proposal down a little bit, but there is room for this extra $500. If you want to consider approving that, I'd ask if you are going to do that you do that today so I can start working on the budget, on the adjustments. But Rebecca and I did have a good conversation. We talked about everything they're doing to support Moorhead and the surrounding community, and for what it's worth, as your acting economic development director, I do support the request for the $500 increase, so thank you.
Thank you.
Any comments? Yes.
I know we've got an upcoming economic development district meeting. I didn't know if you want to share anything about that, or
Well,
another way that we collaborate.
sure. So we meet quarterly, and you're on the Economic Development Board, and I believe it's in 2 weeks, because we were just talking about this today. We usually have a special guest speaker. I know at the last meeting, we really dove into our strategic framework, and so you have a more elaborate depiction of that here. It's been great to have the input from the EDD board and the way that we work on planning and philanthropy together. Do you want to elaborate?
And I've only been there for 2 meetings, and the one before then was focused on childcare, and it was really beneficial just to see, because there's representatives from communities throughout the region, and just to really get a better grasp of how this issue is impacting all of the different communities and in different ways, and then some of the resources that are available. So, looking at ways we can tap into that more is really beneficial.
And I think at the meeting, the last meeting that we had, a lot of people came away from that meeting thinking, wow, we didn't think about that in our community. Look what they're doing in Moorhead, or look what they're doing in Alexandria. So I think that was very beneficial to everyone, I agree. Yeah, thanks. Any other questions for me? Okay, I'm going to stay and listen.
No, do we have to have a motion to approve that 500 increase? Okay.
Yep.
So Somebody care to make that motion?
Maybe just a question. The finalized budget that's going to be coming out, that's going to require our approval as well, correct?
It is, and then it will go to the council after.
So is there a purpose of voting on just the $500 today versus with the larger budget?
Well, only so I can present you with the budget that is accurate for the final approval.
Okay. Motion?
I'll make that motion.
Okay. Second? Thank you. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carried. Thank you.
Thank you, and thank you for your continued support.
All right, Derek, I think it's your turn.
Yeah. Dan Molly and I will kind of tag team this a little bit, but what we've been looking at over the last year, specifically in our Makara Industrial Park, is the city-owned land prices and if they are appropriate for the marketplace and the market in our surrounding region from an industrial land use perspective. We have kind of 3 different categories that are listed, and you'll see the map that's outlined in your packet as well of some of the areas that we're talking about in green. These are the I-94 lots. There's 6 lots, about 2-acre lots each in that segment. You have the rail lots, which are in the kind of pinkish red color. And then we have the 2 large blue lots on the southern end that are just larger lots. I think one's an 11-acre lot. The other is about 20 acres. I should preface this by saying over a number of years, we haven't had a ton of interest or inquiries on these lots, but just over the last probably 3 to 4 months, we've had about 6 to 7 inquiries, as well as about 3 offers that we've had, and one of which has been approved already at council, which is for ISR Homes, Dan Perro, who has bought the furthest eastern lot of that I-94 section. The other 2 interested parties will be going to a future council, and they're looking at lots 1, 2, and 3. So lots 1 being the furthest west, lot 6 being the furthest to the east on the I-94 segment. They're looking at lots 1, 2, and 3 for potential development. So we're starting to see activity, starting to see interest in those lots that just hasn't been there. And I think that goes to show just the good work that we've all been doing to promote kind of some policies and programs that we have, and also just people that are really truly wanting to be a part of Moorhead's future. But with that being said, we knew those price points were very competitive. We're kind of on the lower end of the range to the existing marketplace. It started with getting some just internal review from the city assessor's department. In their perspective, they felt $3 was kind of on the low end, $5 was on the high end for the land prices. Dan, Molly, and myself felt that it would be appropriate to just kind of talk to a few different brokers in town that kind of handle a lot of these industrial and large commercial lots, just to kind of get their flavor on that. That being said, we were able to kind of come up with a new pricing policy that we can use to kind of market these lands. So the big things to kind of point out would be the I-94 lot. So right now, they're priced at $2.50 per square foot. And that would also be separate for special assessments. So it's about 66 cents for special assessment. So $2.50 plus specials. We'd be looking to increase the land price by 50 cents. So $3, which would be the square footage price, plus 66 cents approximately for the specials. On the rail lots, these have been confirmed by the Makara Review Board that these should be for rail users only. We did have some interest from a non-rail user perspective, but those areas and those lots are unique to the marketplace in our region. So we felt that keeping those at the same price and for rail users specifically is justifiable. So they'll be at $3 a square foot. This estimated special assessments is 95 cents per square foot for the rail lots. And then for the larger lots, now these could be sold holistically. They could be parceled out depending on demand and needs. They are currently priced at $1.25 per square foot, plus about $1.08 per square foot for specials. We'd be looking at increasing the land price by 75 cents, which equates to $2 a square foot, again, plus that $1.08 for specials. Again, we've tested these prices. We feel like they're appropriate, but certainly want to get some feedback from the board here. Dan, I don't know if you have anything else that you would like to add to this, just to make sure that we're presenting the right information too.
Yeah, the only thing I might add is, when we went out and tested this on the market, it sounded like that $3 range was on the low, the $5 per square foot was on the high, and these recommendations are coming in right between $3 and $4 to keep them competitive. There's also, when we look at the map, it feels like, especially if 4 of the 6 of the I-94 lots may be disposed of soon, and some interest in other areas, the need to bring service into the park, the business and industrial park.
Any questions? Oops. Any questions, comments, et cetera? Thank you. Moving on, Derek, I think you're in.
Well, we'd be actually looking for approval from the board, a recommendation of
Oh, I'm
approval for
sorry.
these
Yeah.
pricings
I
to
knew
city
that.
council.
Thank you. So we're looking for a motion.
I move to approve.
Thank you. Thank you. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Thank you.
I will say, just to add one more thing that I forgot, is like most of our economic incentives, and in this case specifically to city-owned land, I think it's good practice to be reviewing those on an annual or every 2 years for sure, looking at making sure we're appropriate to the marketplace. So that'll be something that we'll continue to do.
All right, let's move into the economic development report.
Sure. Yeah, I won't be long with it, but just a couple things to stress. Obviously, today is a very big day for our downtown master plan. We're really excited to have the presentation from our project manager, Peggy Harder, and David Dixon that are in town. We'll immediately follow that with a joint meeting with the City Council and the EDA, seeking your direction. But really great stuff, and looking forward for your comments and your feedback on how we lead into phase 2. I mentioned the Makara Industrial Park. You can see just some of the other names that are on here as well. So Dampero, again, from ISR Homes, that has been approved. That's their office showroom, their corporate headquarters that they're building. Pfeiffer's Auction Sales is the other one that's looking at Lot 3. And then RDO is looking at Lots 1 and 2. So exciting users, exciting times to see those expansions and growth in our industrial park. Maybe a couple other things just to draw to your attention, as you may kind of hear some more things come with it. On the back page, you'll see this liquor control restrictions near college campuses. We've been working through some potential new businesses that we're going to be entering our Comstock Commons building that Matt Bosch has developed. At that, there's a blanket kind of restriction that used to be held by the state. That was you couldn't obtain a liquor license within 1,000 feet of higher education campuses. So in our case, M-State, MSUM, and Concordia. That 1,000 feet stretched even into the downtown. It was a big, big boundary, and every year there would be exemptions granted from the state to allow certain users. So that went into local control, and a boundary was established of 300 feet around college campuses. But as we know, through the growth of our community and some of the development around campuses, there was some desire from businesses that would like the ability to serve a glass of wine or a beer in a more of a restaurant setting. We've had some great conversations between the city, the developer, as well as the higher education leadership. We feel like we have some compromise in those situations and some protections in place that the higher ed leadership required. We'll be seeing that go forward to City Council at a future date. But we don't think that's the end of the conversation. I think through some comprehensive planning that the city will be working on in the near future, as well as some kind of core neighborhood strategies around that, I think a broader conversation with the neighborhoods of what they'd like to see, because we want to create flexibility, but also create neighborhood protections and college campuses protections as well. So there'll be some more conversations coming with that as well. But it's great to see that Comstock Commons building kind of up and going. I think they pretty much have all the apartments rented and all the ground floor commercial is leased at this point in time. Well, so it's great to see that come to life. Last thing, I had a great opportunity to attend the International Downtown Association Conference earlier last week. Just always great to connect with peers, whether it's large cities or small cities. It's really a variety. There's thousands of different members and associations that are members of this group. A lot of great experiences, and I would just kind of draw attention to those three kind of things that are common. And we even heard it from a couple of the meetings from David Dixon this morning. But some of the communities that are really, really doing well right now is really focusing on a couple components. One being, art is a strong component to economic development. Building for youth is a critical piece to success as well. And also, probably one of the more important pieces is just consistent leadership. Direction is needed to see a vision come to life. All of these areas have kind of a unified voice, whether it's through their economic development groups such as this, downtown organizations, business organizations, cities, city councils. This unified direction of where you want to go and seeing those accomplished is a big deal. It sets the standard for the business culture, for the development culture, and you see projects start to happen and people that want to be a part of an environment and a community that prides itself in that. So always great experience to learn from peers and peer cities. So excited to kind of bring some of those ideas and challenges to this community as well. With that, I'd be happy to answer any questions if you may have as well.
Here's, there aren't any questions, so it must be mean that you did a good job. Thank you. Item number 9, I just want to call your attention to that. If you are interested in getting updated reports, it's my understanding that the building permit and valuation report comes out tomorrow? Is that today? Okay. So you can just click on the link and get into it if you're interested. So thank you. Any other items? Chris?
Mr. Chair. Board, one thing, you agreed to do the refinancing for the Holiday Mall bonds, if you recall. We tried really hard to get all that information together before today's meeting, but there are some legal situations that we need to work through. So we are going to need a very short 10 to 15-minute meeting next week to have you approve, set a pricing committee, do some of the legal steps to get that bond approved, or that issuance ready to go, right?
Yeah, and actually, there's a pricing committee already established by the old documents. We just need needed some additional time working with our fiscal agent to get the parameters of the actual bond sale, so what the projected interest rate would be and what the size of the issue would be. And they just weren't quite ready yet with that information today. And so we just need to have a short, very, very short special meeting next week to get authorization from this board to go ahead and sell those bonds at a not to exceed interest rate. And they just weren't quite ready yet.
Exactly.
Well, do you have a recommendation for a day?
I don't. Whatever works for the committee. I mean, certainly we could do Tuesday, which is right after, or right before the council meeting that night. It's the first working day of the week, but we're completely flexible.
Anybody have any concerns? Why don't we just set it for Tuesday?
Okay. Same time? Same time? I'm asking. I don't know. Same time?
11:45?
11:45? Okay. 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 We need a,
Bring like 25 students with
They might be
That won't be
interested.
1-1.
We need a majority, I think.
Yeah.
Is that correct? So is there a majority that can attend?
We could,
Yeah,
it's
I
going to
can-
be 5 minutes. We could
I can
always
be
do it
here.
at like 12:30. It's
Yeah, if
truly
there's a different
5-minute
time,
meeting.
Noon is okay too, I,
Yeah? Sorry?
11:45.
11:45 next Tuesday. Okay, we'll send out an invite. Thank you.
okay, thank you. Any other items? Thank you all. The meeting's adjourned.
Yeah, and I'll just say too, just immediately, obviously following, we're gonna have the presentation. We're gonna do it from the audience, so we'll just have everybody sit out there. We're gonna have it up on the screens for the presentation, the PowerPoint. There's a couple handouts that we'll send around as well, but I think that's just the easiest way with the size of the crowd that we have as well. So, thank you.
And if you want to grab your lunch, if you haven't already, go ahead and bring.
Introductions. My name is Peggy Harder. I work for Stantec Consulting right here in the Fargo-Moorhead area. I've been doing work with the city of Moorhead since about 2004 now on different projects. I am the project manager on the Moorhead Downtown Master Plan update and have been working with Derek LaPointe on almost a daily basis on this project. But with me today, I also have my colleague, David, if you want to raise your hand. David Dixon, also with Stantec, and he's the head of our Urban Places group. David specializes in working on urban and downtown plans, I would say across the U.S., but across North America, because we also go up toward to the north as well sometimes. So David is here today to share some of his insights specific to downtown Moorhead and just what he's seeing nationally across the country. Kind of the purpose for today's meeting is we had 3 distinct phases kind of laid out for our Moorhead Downtown Master Plan update. And we're just ended phase 1 and we're kicking off into phase 2. So the purpose of this meeting today is to really tell you guys what we uncovered and what we heard during phase 1 and what we're starting to see as kind of this draft vision for phase 2. So phase 1 was a lot of the foundation. What are the existing conditions? What is the existing market? All those things. What did we hear from the public that they want? The conditions of our downtown Moorhead study area. I'm going to start by telling you guys that the boundary that we are studying, as shown kind of in the white area on this map on your second slide, is our study area. But it is not the ultimate definition of downtown Moorhead, but it is the downtown Moorhead that we just worked with folks to identify.
You'll see this graphic is kind of cyclical because to support a downtown, you need three components. It needs to be an employment center, you need retail opportunities, and you need housing. You need to support itself. So looking at where do you guys really already have to work with, and I'm not sure if everybody in this room knows, but the population of your downtown triples during the workday. So you guys already have a strong employment base in your downtown. So really building off the fact that population during the workday triples, those employees become customers. They want a place to eat during lunch. They might want to run some errands and do some things while they're at work or before and after work. So building on that, moving over, there's a lot of retail opportunity. Now people are saying, the way of retail is really changing nowadays with online shopping. And if you look in that, I'm not going to lie, it's a 30-page document we have online now to summarize all of the input we got from phase one. Some people were really specific as to what they'd like to see in the downtown, but in general, people are looking for experiences. They want even their shopping to be an experience. They want those, those places that interact with the street. You guys have seen across the country what's supporting successful downtowns, and they want that retail experience to be more experiential. But also, again, you have that employment workforce base to start with, and they can become customers shopping downtown to support the retail. And then as the cycle goes around, customers become residents. Looking at your market assessments, you could support between 43 to 120 new apartment units yearly. That's the demand right now for those rental units in your downtown. And then what can those residents living down become? They can become employees. Because more and more nowadays, people do not want to spend a ton of money on transportation. It's becoming more and more attractive to be able to walk and have short commutes to your work. So you're seeing more and more. So this is how we see kind of the flow and the cycle, and I'd like to ask David or Derek to kind of add to this slide.
So first of all, thank you for the attention you're paying to giving us for this and your time and attention, and boy, do we look forward to your comments. But I want to just comment a little bit on, sort of pick up on Peggy's comments about sort of how a downtown works in terms of jobs, retail, and housing. Because at this point in time, one of those is driving change in the others, and that is housing. If you look forward the next 20 years, roughly 80+% of all net new households in this country are going to be singles and couples. That's an issue if we want more kids, but boy, does that shape our housing market going forward. And that is an immense, undertapped downtown opportunity, because folks without kids are much more likely to want to live downtown than anybody else. And we don't have enough housing for them anywhere, let alone in this region. Secondly, how should I say this? I'm part of the vanguard. 56% of net population growth the next 20 years is going to be folks over 65. At around that age, many of us decide we don't want our single-family house anymore. It's a nuisance, but we want to stay in our community. We don't necessarily, I hear a lot of folks here go to Arizona. We don't all necessarily want to go to Arizona. We would love to live downtown, in a place where we can walk and live in a housing unit that somebody else takes care of. That's more than half our population growth for the next 20 years. You put those two together, it's a tremendous opportunity. One of the things that all these folks do is support the kind of retail that is thriving these days. I know there's one very unique retailer in this room. The internet is not going to outcompete you. But the internet is basically penetrating most retail markets with two exceptions. They're both sort of the same thing. Food, think beer, coffee, anything, and highly experiential, unique. Both of those benefit from walk-to markets more than anything. If you can get 1,000 housing units within a 5-minute walk, you can bring a lot of retail to life along a main street, because those folks will walk. It's not all the support they need, but it's enough to attract the retailers. Spread that 1,000 units out over a 10-minute walk, very little bang for your buck. 5-minute walk in downtown, you get a real payback. Those shops, in turn, that food, that beer for hopefully after work, attracts employees. These days, we have a growing labor shortage in this country of skilled and educated labor. Basically, our GDP would actually be 2 or 3 percentage points higher if we had as many college graduates entering the workforce as the workforce needs. It turns out that just like folks without kids, because they don't have a lot of them, or those of us over 65, the more educated you are, the more attractive, the more the workforce wants you, the more you want to live and work downtown. So if you have a downtown that's full of retail and fun, probably because it has a lot of people working there. So you have the housing market, you've got sites where this housing can come to, a mall that represents an amazing sort of, not so much redevelopment, but how do you make it relevant for the 21st century opportunity that will support retail, attract jobs and investment? Does this make sense? And you are lucky enough to have decided to do this at a time when this housing market is knocking at the door. And I just want to put it in perspective because I think this really is the story of your opportunity here. Any questions? Okay, thanks.
Thank you, David. I wanted to just take a few minutes to recap on the Phase 1 engagement. Many of you, I'm seeing many faces. I don't know if there was anybody that I'm seeing here that wasn't at least one of our Phase 1 engagement activities. We had an online survey. We worked really closely with Derek and Moorhead planning staff to ensure that it was a short enough survey, people would be interested and they would take it, but that we got the questions right so that the input that we got back would actually help us to build a plan that the people want. We had over 700 respondents to our online survey, which I have to say, we've talked about it. I don't think I've ever seen one with that many respondents anywhere that we've done one. So the synergy is there. Not only is the city and DMI making these incentive changes to make this more, but these are the citizens telling you that they want this as well. We had over 75 attendees at our community meetings, our public open house, and it was a very hands-on open house. We didn't stand and present and preach to them a whole lot. We talked to them a little bit about some statistics, but for downtowns. But we had a lot of engagement activities. We had a fun activity called Moorhead Moolah. People could only have so many dollars with things in downtown Moorhead, and we said, how would you spend your money? I think I talked about the 6-word stories. We did that at our pop-up events and online and and it's just, based on your 6-word story, the old Ernest Hemingway 6-word story. In 6 words, what's your vision for downtown Moorhead? And when we looked at our draft vision in a little bit, we used a lot of that to develop that. We also did the what do I love, what do I want more, and what do I want less of? So we said, in looking at what you think about the downtown right now, and we got tons of feedback on that. And this is all documented. We have a document for all of every little tiny piece of feedback that we got back through our public engagement. We have a document online for that. But as we move into what we see for kind of this draft vision and kicking off Phase 2, we used all of that feedback. Another important thing is we had 9 stakeholder listening sessions. These were sessions where city staff, DMI staff, David, myself, our lead planner out of Minneapolis, Beth Elliott, we sat down one-on-one with 9 different groups and just gave them an hour to talk about it. We made these groups like 10 people or less so we could get the most out of it. So we met one with city staff and kind of the technical people from our city staff. We met with a transportation group and included all forms of transportation. We had Matt Bus there, bike ped advocates, active transportation. We had one that just represented folks that are right here in the mall. We had one that represented lenders in the area. Lenders and real estate agents. We talked to developers, existing businesses. And we just wanted to give them the opportunity to tell them about the plan, kind of what our scope was for the plan, and just listen. And that's why we called them listening sessions, is we wanted to listen to them for, what do you think are the opportunities? What do you think are going to be the hurdles, the challenges? And really get all that feedback. And that's really all summarized in that document as well. And I don't know if I could ask, Derek or David, or there's a few folks in the audience that were at those listening sessions or that worked at those public input meetings, to share some of the key feedback that we got that we thought really stood out and was really important.
Yeah, I'd first start out in just saying that, these listening sessions, as well as going out to the public, was such a crucial component of it. I've said this all along since I was hired by Downtown Moorhead Inc., that this isn't my vision, this isn't my board's vision of what this should become, or what Downtown Moorhead can be. This has to be a grassroots effort from our businesses, our residents, working together with the Moorhead Business Association, the EDA, the council. All of us need to be striving together to make something we're all proud of. And I'm glad to see that, one, we had the turnout we did for these listening sessions, whether it was artists or businesses or some of the challenges that we have and we face too with directly going to some of these developers, directly going to the business bankers, the commercial realtors, the lenders that are out there, and asking them point blank, what are you seeing, what are your experiences? All that information is so valuable to us and how we determine what our next steps are. Some of the common themes, I know we talked about them in some previous meetings this morning already, but one that I think we're all fighting and hearing about is income tax, right? The higher income tax. But how I've described it is we need to create an environment where people want to be. If they're going to create, or if they're going to pay that higher income tax, they're going to want to have an experience that they're going to want to live in. They're going to want to be close to. They're going to want to go to on a regular basis. But most of those individuals don't understand our border city legislation. And that to me is such a gaping hole and a challenge to all of us in this room of educating our businesses, educating our developers and our residents what is available to them, why you can be successful here. Now it takes time, it takes success stories, and we all know our challenges over our last 20 years. But that's real opportunity right in front of our faces to accelerate this process, not only for downtown, but for our entire community.
The only quick observation I would have is to pick up on your term, I forgot what you said, shared vision or common vision. One of the things that struck me is I didn't hear, I actually can't think of any competing visions I heard. People are really on the same page, and that's hugely important. And I'd have to say, one of the things that really struck me is, I'll come back to the mall again, rather than look at the mall as, oh my God, this was built at a certain time and we're stuck with it, people really look at this as an opportunity. They're very, they have a lot of respect for, and I was really struck by a real connection to the retailers who were in there. It's not the retailers that they're concerned about or want to change, but they see a tremendous opportunity because there's a big chunk of land just when markets are knocking at the door and saying we want to do something.
And all the way around, the resounding themes that we heard, I think you're going to see here a little bit, and when we talk about our vision statement, was we have a view of the river. That's amazing. We have not blocked that off. We're not planning to block that off. We need to utilize that view and that connection to the river. We have our own unique culture. One of the things we got for the 6-word story is hippie little sister. People said, we're not going to be duplicative of exactly what downtown Fargo is because we are different. We're a different culture. We have a different economy, even though we're right across the river. So how can we work to support each other? Well, downtown Fargo has a retail where they need more housing to support them, and we have the opportunity and the demand for that housing.
You just made me think of two things. One thing that we have also not talked about, that people have talked a lot about, but this has a bigger question mark next to it, is how can we find greater, how can the colleges, universities here in downtown find greater synergy? They both really need each other at this point in time. How can we make that synergy work? The other thing I want to take note of, which I find fascinating, and I think people have a good sense of here, it wasn't as if we stopped inventing downtowns in the 1980s, 90s, and 2000s when we figured out how to renovate a lot of wonderful old buildings and recreate the character of an historic downtown. That was an era, and there are a lot of great downtowns. We're marching forward into new eras with new exciting ideas. And I think that one of the things that people get here is that in some ways, Moorhead, this is the main thing, Moorhead is going to be the next great idea. That makes sense. And that will create a sort of a two-centered region that will be a really pretty special place.
And you know, when I mentioned those listening sessions, I forgot, we did meet with the colleges. We actually met with all the educations. We met K through 12 and the colleges. And they are very supportive of what can we do to improve our downtowns. They said, not only are we trying to attract students, we would love to retain some of those students after graduation, but we're also trying to attract college professors, which can be a challenge for us. You know, especially, you know, you look at Concordia and everything with the arts and culture, and they see downtown Moorhead. They said, we want it to be a place that attracts them. They might want to live there. Even though they have some space on their campuses to handle growth, they do want to very much so support, you know, improving our downtown Moorhead. And we talked to M-State, and M-State actually does need growth potential. So even though they're not the ones that are right next door, you know, it's a very important part of our city is that we have a lot of college students. So how do we attract them to get them here in the first place? And then it's part of what keeps them here. It's what the generation is really wanting.
If educated young folks like living and working in downtown, guess where they like going to school?
Got a helicopter coming in.
Yeah. So, I mean, we could talk about key points of our engagement all day long, but I heavily encourage you, get online, get on our website, take a look at that document and look at all of the feedback we got from all of the different ways, and you will see a lot of these resounding themes. So I just kind of wanted to, before we move into phase 2, I'm going to talk about our schedule for the project. The good news is we are exactly on our originally planned schedule. So we finished our phase 1, creating foundations, all those things we just talked about, existing and projected conditions, past plans, how does the public feel about everything? So we're moving into phase 2. We kind of summarized everything, started drafting what our vision is for the downtown. So right at the beginning of November, where we're at today, we met today with our technical committee, city staff. We met with a couple of developers that requested kind of an update to what we heard during phase 1. We're meeting with you folks now with EDA and city council members to give you guys kind of an update as to where we're at with the plan. And then tonight, we're actually going to give a presentation to DMI's board as well. And really what we're looking to get out of today's meeting is to kind of share with you, like I said, what happened in phase 1. But as I switch gears here and talk about phase 2 that we're kicking off for our plan framework, we've started to draft out the vision for the plan, and we really want to get your guys' feedback. So the next 3 slides I show you guys are high-level draft, and they're really based on that existing conditions and public feedback that we got. So we'd really love to get you guys to give your input on it, like, yeah, I think that's right on, or I think you're missing this, or I think you're way off. We're looking for input and feedback today from you guys, because this is going to be the basis of what starts building the framework of all the different pieces of the plan as we move forward. And that is really the purpose of today's meeting, give you an update and then kind of start to gain some feedback on this stuff. We are looking at, just so you folks know, having our next round of public input opportunities at the end of phase 2 towards the end of January of 2020, where we're going to have almost the same type of things. We're going to have the online survey. The listening sessions will be the same groups, but they'll be a little bit more hands-on. We're going to do kind of some design exercises, and then we'll have a huge public outreach meeting again as well. So with that, moving into kind of the draft pieces of phase 2, I am actually going to read to you guys, word for word, the draft vision that we've developed. So think about this as our vision for the future of downtown Moorhead. Downtown Moorhead pairs a small town feel with vibrant city life. Surrounded by natural amenities and strong institutions, downtown draws residents, visitors, and students to major destinations and everyday experiences. It captures the best of Moorhead's vital culture to create a contemporary and livable hub that constitutes the heart of Moorhead as a community and a center of activity for the region. It's a place where everyone can live, work, and play, all within a 5-minute walk. That's kind of maybe a big vision statement. But like I said, we heard a lot of the same resounding themes, and just kind of thinking about that. You don't have to respond to it today. If you have additional feedback on some of these things, I would suggest maybe email any additional comments maybe over the next week on what you're seeing in this packet to Derek. But, you know, thinking how that plays into, this vision will start to trickle into the values for downtown. And these will eventually lead to kind of like goals and policies and strategies as we look at the specific development areas of our downtown. Before I get into these, any high-level comments on the vision statement first? I know you're just hearing it for the first time, it's draft.
Is there a specific reason why businesses aren't included in that list? Downtown draws residents, visitors, and students, but I didn't see anything specifically dealing with businesses.
I think we could figure out how to work that in. You know, I think the businesses are considered to be the destinations and experiences, but maybe it's not 100% clear there, but we can think about how we might want to reword that to clarify that. And sometimes businesses are play, but not necessarily always. But I think we work on adding the word businesses somewhere into there, because obviously that's that retail and experiential component of everything we've been hearing. Thank you, Michael.
Thank you for sharing. I was just curious, when you came to those listening sessions, how much are we including the voices of, as you see the demographics have changed over the years in the Fargo-Moorhead area, and I was wondering, any of the leaders of some of those different communities that have over the years been more and more in numbers at the table. So like, I can think of the top of my mind some of the leaders, but when you're doing those listening sessions, are we including some of those fast changing demographics? Because I've heard many times people saying when they go to high schools and middle schools, like, whoa.
Yeah, they're surprised.
These are the
Yep,
leaders
yep.
of tomorrow. How do we tailor downtown and whatnot to?
We did talk a little bit about that, especially with our representative from the K through 12 schools, because when we met with schools and educational and institutions, we had a representative for our K to 12 schools. So we talked about that quite a bit with him. And then we did have, you know, kind of a cultural arts and design, but it didn't really talk about the changing demographics. So,
I'm sorry, I'm being very.
Go ahead.
I don't think, listening to you, we've heard enough. It just suddenly, a little bell went off. And one of the really great things about a town, you were talking about businesses, I was also thinking about innovators. It's a great place for people, particularly representing new cultures, to start businesses, to enrich this culture with their culture. In downtown, it becomes a headline. And I don't think we probably have caught enough of that yet. That probably is not your question, but it's certainly.
And maybe we can work together too on the focus groups that we have built out, and see if there's some good leaders in your opinion that could be good fits.
I once did some work for the foundation in Minneapolis. What's that?
Bush Foundation?
No. McKnight, yeah. And it was looking at the impact of immigrant businesses and sort of entrepreneurship on Minneapolis-St. Paul. And it was for the region, but also broadly. And I think understanding, we probably haven't fully tapped that here.
Thank you.
anything else before we move on to kind of reviewing the values? Okay, and looking at, again, these are the draft values, and we focused on 6 core values, kind of focusing on that would support that vision. And underneath each of these values is where we'd start to look at maybe some goals or some policies or some strategies and how they support these values. And again, you have that right in front of you, but I'm still going to read it out loud for the group. So feel free to chime in as we discuss any of them, or we can talk about them at the end. But these are common values to downtowns. So in particular to Moorhead, creative kind of really speaks to me. An eclectic and funky culture distinguishes downtown through public art and experiential spaces. So these are those values that are going to support our vision, because this is what we heard a lot from the public. Thoughts, comments on that one? I had some, oh? Authentic. Downtown encounters are memorable and help define Moorhead's unique character and assets. And there is a lot of authenticity to Moorhead overall. I mean, looking at the video that the city just put out, and, you know, people told us a lot of really unique things about why they live in Moorhead, and they're very authentic reasons. So carrying that authenticity into the downtown. Livable, and David's gonna love this. A compact critical mass of people, commerce, civic life, and culture animate downtown streets, providing a rich mix of experience and safety that create a culture of walkability. We're gonna mention this probably 3 or 4 more times during the presentation, but I think David spoke on it. If that compact critical mass is within a 5-minute walking zone, it can make such a difference. If it's spread out to 10 minutes, you start to see less interest from the retail groups. So getting that compact critical mass living, you know, when you look at different areas, makes a huge, huge difference to the development of your downtowns.
And from another perspective, somebody who's sitting in this audience talked about being challenged to go out and buy a series of items in a downtown across the river, and had lots of fun, but couldn't find all the items. Is that fair? Came to Moorhead, could find all the items, but didn't really run into anybody. If you have compact critical mass, you're 5 or 10 times as likely to run into people, have chance encounters, you know, talk about making multiculturalism real, run into different kinds of folks, and you know, share life, et cetera, than if you're spread out. That's the magic of downtown.
Dynamic. Being downtown as a resident or visitor is a wonderful experience that is rich in opportunities for entertainment, recreation, shopping, and leisurely strolling. Connected. Downtown provides walking, biking, and transit connections to nearby colleges, neighborhoods, the river, and adjacent cities. And inclusive. As a place that is accessible and welcoming to everyone, downtown is where Moorhead comes together.
I think the first one and the last one in particular, I see those as being especially important because they kind of get at the root of when people describe what makes Moorhead unique. Those are the themes that often seem to come up, whereas the others are all things that, you know, it could describe other
Downtowns.
But it's, you know, and I see them as sort of, at this point, people will describe it in terms of the culture of the community, of how we are unique, but it's also aspirational in terms of how do we then live that? How do we create a space that lives up to that vision, lives up to those values?
Mm-hmm.
If I might, your vision, when I read or hear your vision, I immediately think of the colleges and the interaction with the colleges. When we start to get to these values, it seems we start to forget about that. So just a comment, I would probably spend some time in the next phase talking about how we create connections, not just with sidewalks, but with land use. That I think there's an area plan, neighborhood plan called Camptown, which was a concept of one of the original master plans of the town. So how do we start creating that linkage so we can get those younger people, those more diverse residents and population into downtown to create more livable land?
And that's a conversation, I think, you know, I don't know if that's covered under the connected one, you know, to provide the walking, biking, transit connections to the nearby colleges, the neighborhoods, the river, and adjacent cities. But that's a conversation we had not only when we had those design sessions, those listening sessions with the focus groups, not only with the schools themselves, but with the active transportation group. And I think we gained some really valuable knowledge and insights, because that is a thing, you know, when we talk to younger students, I don't know if I mentioned, but when I was talking about all the venues of public involvement that we did, Derek and I did 2 pop-up event sessions where we went to where the people were and talked to them about the plan. And one of those pop-up events was the Bridge Bash, where the Main Avenue Bridge was already closed down, you know, but where we get on the Main Avenue Bridge and it brings the college students together right after they started college. And that was something we heard directly from the students that came as, you know, what is their downtown? Like even some of the great businesses that are already downtown, they didn't know about them. and they didn't know how to get down here. You know, they're young students on the campus, and, you know, they're not sure how, if they're going to use the bus, and, well, we can just eat right on campus and stuff. And so there is a huge educational component and means of connecting the colleges. And then we talked with some of our active transportation groups about not only transit, but also, you know, the rideshare programs, the bike shares, going to the campuses. There's a lot of opportunity. So when we look at, and we'll get to the map here in just a second, when we start to look at transportation, we're going to look at it from all modes, and we're going to look at those connections not only to our campuses right here in Moorhead, but also those connections across the river. Because we can tap into the folks already living across the river, or if people are living over here, destinations across, the downtowns can support each other for a while and build off of each other. So it's really important that we can get people across the river as well. So that's a great comment on the connections.
Just to build on, I think it's a really good comment. Often when we talk about connected, we don't really do this here. We talk about it in two dimensions. One is mobility and through connections. The other is things downtown that connect to people's lives, that are reasons that are integral to their lives. And it's almost as if we need an integral category here, so that whether you're a student, you're you've come here recently, you're my age or whatever, there are things downtown that are central to your life. Is this making sense? That really connect you to it emotionally, pragmatically in other ways. And I think that's maybe something we should get out a little further, because it's a great test to say, if there are these 12 different kinds of people, is there something downtown that's integral to each of those 12 lives? That's when a downtown really becomes everybody's. Is that getting your point?
Yeah, just to give maybe an example of where my connectivity thoughts go. So the new, is it Comstock Commons, for example, that to me begins to connect downtown with those students. And the same can be said in downtown Fargo. No one went to the far end of Broadway by the Empire because there was a block to get to something. So to me, it's not just being able to walk that 5 minutes. It's that I can stop 3 places on my way. So when we begin to get to implementation about land uses and zoning and city incentives, whatever the case might be, I think people's nature is going to want to focus on this mall, which is very important. How we connect this mall to the river. But let's not forget creating those connections and priorities, getting to the campuses, so that kind of the hopscotch mentality, right? So that I can go down that street, 8th Street in particular, and connect to those downtown environments. I think we go to Junkyard Brewing as an example on a Thursday night in the summertime, hang out on the patio. You'll see lots of young people. And it's people coming from those campuses. And so they're getting in their car, but how do we allow and give that hopscotch to get people
So
into
you're
downtown?
really talking about two things. One is the destination, a purpose. The other is a trip that is sufficiently inviting that you'll take it. Yes, yeah. On foot. Or on a scooter.
So what about IT and technology? I mean, everyone, anyone is into that. I mean, and I don't know what that looks like. That looks like an upscale Best Buy with some experiences happening within it. I just don't know what that would be, but I mean, that would be, everybody is interested in that.
And you can buy it online, that's the problem. But there's another
But you can't
dimension.
experience.
No, but you know how you can experience it. So one of the things that, so jumping ahead here, and this is not a Jet City thing I'm talking about, in 10 years, a majority of cars on the road in North America will have enough connected technology to park themselves. So you'll say to your car, go park yourself. When your car parks itself, you're not in it. So it can park 6 inches from your car next door. And it doesn't need a 20 or 24-foot zone to go out and pull out to leave, et cetera. So every single parking structure, coming to your point in a minute, parking structure and parking lot in the U.S. and in Moorhead is going to be able to start to accommodate more and more cars without having to add any new parking facilities. So the other side of it is we're going to start putting sensors and all kinds of things that allow us to interact with our cities so that our cars can park themselves, so that we can get information very quickly. And that will also be part of this plan. I think the way we experience technology is actually going to be much more incremental and around practical, not necessarily practicality and fun. One of the really cool things when we talk about streetscape, you know, we used to talk about pop art, or, you know, you put a tree and a piece of public art. Now, a group of folks can, kids, but folks of age, can walk down the street, all use their phones and create a symphony together if there are the right, if there are things basically embedded in that sidewalk that will make sounds. Is this making sense? I'm losing my mind. You can put on light shows together. You can get, you and 20 folks you've never met before can put on a light show downtown with your phones if we have built in the technology that allows you to do that. It's those kinds of ways that I think will really begin to experience smart cities. Is that making sense?
And I would say even not, like going away from even smart cities, but so Violet, maybe to your point too, we have a company in town, Lightspeed, who is doing virtual reality stuff. Things that, you know, I'm not that old, but like I would have never thought that they're going to be offering college scholarships for people playing video games.
Yeah.
Or, you know, worldwide, you know, historic arenas being sold out to gaming and stuff. Now there's Lightspeed took the initiative, and they're working with a group to build an arena in Fargo. But those are things that, like, I mean, you have to almost think futuristic that becomes a component of a, I mean, this is a Moorhead business doing that.
I was at an architect conference of Colorado, the Colorado State Conference, or Colorado AIA State Conference on Friday. And somebody raised her hand and said, so we're going to be designing virtual reality environments in 10 or 20 years as opposed to buildings? And that's an open question. So,
And yeah, interactive art pieces, I mean, they don't have to be expensive and they're great.
talk about getting college students to make the trip to get beer or something, give them an interactive experience on the way, so it becomes a game. There's an intersection in some German city where they've got, basically you pay sort of a pong game on either side of the intersection while you're waiting for the light to change. You can play with the people on the other side. Things like that will definitely happen.
You all remember Pokemon, right?
I was just going to add too, when I first read this, when I first got this from the Stantec, one kind of thing that triggered my mind, specifically to downtown and Moorhead historically too, is think of where the location for Moorhead parades are, and how we lost that to an environment that just appealed to, let's have open spaces, let's have, you know, no parking issues, no traffic issues, to all of a sudden we could have had an environment or remained in an environment where, yes, it's more challenging, but you get people that come down and have a dinner, have an ice cream, maybe go to a store and shop. Convenience almost over experience.
Well, the way you say, let's put the parade in a place no one wants to be.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I mean, you're touching on something else. Anything we do, whether it's new housing, thinking about where we put public events, where we have parades, should all be aimed at supporting 14 local restaurants that will then attract people to live and work downtown, or unique businesses, et cetera. I mean, it is, everything needs to be basically doing multiple jobs, if you see what I'm saying, reinforcing each other.
I just want to say something about your 5-minute walk thing. You know, it takes 15 minutes to walk across there. And so what we're going to need is we're going to need a lot of density. You're going to end up with 5-minute pots here and there. We're going to end up with a number of them. We're not just talking about one 5-minute walk in an area. We're going to be talking about multiple ones. Because, you know, where we are, we're in a hot spot. We can create another hot spot here. There can be another hot spot by the Comstock Commons. And I just think that it's actually going to take multiple 5 minutes to tie together.
It's a great segue into this kind of draft little strategy map that we put together, because the circle on this map shows a little guy in there. You guys have it in your thing? When it's up here, can you see where the guy is right here? So half of that circle, the radius of it is a 5-minute walk.
That's the 5 minutes we look to at least start with.
So this is, you know, if you look at your whole downtown, half of that circle is a 5-minute walk. So you're exactly right. I mean, we could, if you were going east to west, you're going to fit at least 3 of those in there, if not a little bit more. So 15 minutes just to go straight line east to west through the area that we're studying. So you're exactly right in that. So I think we're going to segue into talking about this map. We kind of started to look at the downtown as a draft strategy plan, and it might be easier for you guys to see if you look in your packets. And we really looked at it from a few different perspectives. We looked at different character districts based on kind of what's there today. And we also looked at our lead planner for this project, Beth Elliott, has worked on this a lot with David and myself and some other planners that work on these plans in downtown. And she actually was a planner for the city of Minneapolis for quite a long time. And so she was on the public side of things and implemented a lot of this. And so we kind of looked at what are your opportunities for development, and she kind of laid it out really great this morning as 3 different ways. One, what is the area that is publicly owned, that we can maybe a little bit more control, that's publicly owned? 2, who are your current business owners or business developers that are already sunk in downtown Moorhead that want to see it do its best and are going to help be those cheerleaders for improving downtown Moorhead? And then 3, you're going to have some of those developers that come in and say, I want to be downtown and I have this great idea and I want to do this, I want to put this in. So there's 3 different types of development opportunities. So we looked at from our existing conditions, what we heard from the public, and then what are your different kind of development opportunities. And we kind of started to break out some of the character districts and how the streets work and play. And when we talk about streets, we are by no means just talking about moving traffic. And Derek and David, I'm going to start to go through some of these character districts, but feel free to chime in at any time. We broke it into existing neighborhoods. We know exactly where those are. We know exactly where those are going to stay. Not a lot's going to change with those, just kind of on the periphery of our downtown. Open space, I think I've probably kind of hit that one several times. We have this great opportunity with these open spaces in and around our downtown. We have had a few folks ask us, what does downtown Moorhead have maybe that downtown Fargo doesn't have, and the open spaces and the opportunity to interact with those open spaces are really great. I think it was Dan that had a really great point today. If you look at the proximity of where the heart of downtown Fargo's biggest epicenter is, they're actually closer probably to the green spaces in Moorhead than their green space down in Island Park. So I mean, that's something that's a great opportunity. So we've highlighted all of our green spaces. The infrastructure on here really points out our railroad tracks, because we know we have the high presence of the rail in downtown Moorhead. So we did highlight that because we know there's going to be some development setbacks, but we also want to look at some opportunities for some maybe some open space opportunities, that public realm type opportunity. So when we get into the kind of the 3 more strategic districts, we look at, if you see the darker red on here, we call it the Moorhead Center District. It's kind of the darker red, surrounds Center Avenue, surrounds the existing mall site area. Seeing this as kind of that urban core area with the maximum density. This is where David was talking earlier about that critical core mass. So looking at maybe where you start, we got to have that critical core mass in that 5-minute walk. We need to, that's a very important focus. You need to figure out where's that critical core mass going to be for the growth to jump off and to continue. Do you have anything to add to that, David or Derek?
I would just say to Pat's point, I mean, I think you're spot on. Obviously, we created this district here because that's where the concentration is, but certainly there's other nodes and other destinations that have pioneered growth in this downtown district. So Junkyard being one of them, where your kind of location is at. When I, especially when I first started this job, and I know I've said this to almost everybody here, I would have just instinctively thought, well, the growth from Fargo would have spilled to the river and worked its way east. It's almost been the opposite, by these destination points that have kind of spurred it. But I think from a full concentration, when you look at the road layout and the layout of the spaces, et cetera, I think that's where this center was created. But that certainly doesn't mean that these connections, from the junkyard space or from the business that you're talking about, Pat, doesn't correlate to that epicenter as well.
I actually think you need to almost plan on with grade separation, that you're going to end start. Because once that grade separation goes in, we're going to be dealing with 2 5-minute areas. I mean, it's going to happen whether we like it or not. And we all agree we want the grade separations.
And
That's why we have to be very, very strategic as we have those conversations about 11th Street underpass of how that design looks. If the funding does, come from the state and others, that design element is very critical on how we tie those 2 areas together. Because yes, an underpass can create that north-south connection via automobile, but we don't want to lose that pedestrian disconnect from north-south, east-west. So the design elements of that and the way that functions is going to have to be under very critical eye, and all of us in this room as elected and EDA members have to take that in consideration with our existing businesses that are there, or the way it lays out for any new businesses that may come along those corridors as well.
And that we relocate them businesses and make sure that they're right in our bullseye that we're trying to.
So you're raising a really important point, and the first thing I did was check to see where you were on this map. You're on it.
Right across from Junkyard Brewery.
Which is a real note. So I think one of the things that the dilemmas we have, and we might as well all be direct about this, we're all in the same family, so to speak, is that we clearly would like to get, to the extent we can, as much of the new housing that comes in, and you've got some pretty robust housing demand, as close together in a kind of a core area as we can, because that's where we can really bring streets to life, walkability, attract jobs and investment. At the same time, there are going to be other really cool nodes, obviously Junkyard is, that will grow around downtown. And the last thing that we want to try and do is second guess or anticipate where the next great idea is going to come from, because we're not going to have all those ideas. And we want to create a system that supports those ideas while at the same, so really cool stuff does happen around there. At the same time, we get a place probably growing out from the mall, which is just an astounding opportunity simply because of its critical mass, where we can really concentrate our growth so we get the payback. Is this making sense to folks? Okay. Thank you. Okay.
So, kind of to build on what David said, we have these other 2 characteristic districts downtown. The downtown mixed use, again, a very walkable district, kind of your standard density from a housing standpoint. And then the Creative Pioneers District, which is the lighter purple over here on the map. It's the area where you're speaking to, where Junkyard Brewing and the new apartment buildings have been going up. This is all a draft. This is our first shot at it. This is the first time anyone's seeing it today. Like I said, we built it off some of the existing conditions, the availabilities of maybe the biggest potential with some of the land options, and then just basically the feedback that we got from all of our public involvement in phase 1. As we move into phase 2, how we'll look at this map is with those different character districts and how the streets interact with those character districts. We'll be looking at the various components that we'll be reviewing for phase 2 to start saying, how do we develop all the framework for this plan for the 6 components that we'll be looking at in phase 2? So those 6 components, and I'm jumping ahead a little bit, they're in a little pie chart on the last page of your packet where we talk about kind of what's coming up. So in phase 2, we're going to start to develop the framework for land use and development. So not just what's there today, but looking towards the future land use and development. The transportation components, and that's all modes of transportation, so that's vehicles, buses, walking, biking, everything. Parking, we have a huge parking analysis as part of this. Streetscaping and wayfinding. So really, what does that feel like? Where's your pedestrian zone? Where's your furniture zone? Where are the connections between some of these character districts? Placemaking, for those of you that don't know, we do have Folkways as part of our team. Folkways, Joe Burgum is going to be working with placemaking. Once we get some of these spaces going, he's going to help us to identify strategies to activate these places, get people down there and experience them so that they know about it. So we're not hearing from the colleges saying, students at the Bridge Bash saying, I didn't even know that existed. He's going to help us identify those strategies for placemaking. Open space and land use and development. And we do have land elements on our team. They're going to help with identifying streetscaping and wayfinding and some of those development strategies, as well as we have Kilbourne Group on our team who's going to help us take these once we move into the third and final phase, phase 3, and we start looking at developing specific strategies for some of these sites and maybe developing some RFP language. So we will look at these various street zones and these character districts, and then we'll start to apply actual framework for these 6 different varying areas.
I was just curious, on 8th Street, there's been a famous coffee shop on the Fargo side that just opened a new branch, 20 below.
Yep.
And I was wondering, how do we, not to steal some of the business from the Fargo side, but incentivize sometimes those that are looking to expand to consider coming on our side of the river?
Well, our incentive expert here is on our team, is walking right back into the room. We've actually been talking a lot when we talked about looking at all of those existing plans and studies and everything that build into this. The actual first few pages of that document that we put online are all of the tax incentives for businesses in downtown Moorhead and everything that's applicable to the TIF district. Derek, you're just coming back in, but you might be better suited to ask this question as a question specific to incentives for some of the businesses to come over into downtown Moorhead.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, that's been a big conversation since I started. I think we've tailored some of the tools that make sense now for folks with the establishment of the Renaissance Zone. I still think those are quality programs and a quality incentive package that correlates well, especially across the river with, I've said this to everybody in this room, with really a regional development-based group. We don't really have a whole lot of national developers, so to have their attention quickly with a program that they already are familiar with is important. So I think we'll continue to see those. Now, certainly, we have the abilities to use traditional ways of incentivizing a project, being tax increment financing. Now, that's for a development project. Now, specifically to business attraction and retention, that's where I think we still can have broader conversations. Actually, City Manager Chris Volkers and Dan Wally and Amy Thorpe and myself just had a conversation last week of, are we utilizing the border city appropriation appropriately? Could there be other programs that we develop? Right now it's going towards that workers' compensation piece, but could there be other, obviously we have a limited amount of funds to it, so that's something to keep in mind, but are there sustainable programs that we can develop to help people establish and take roots in our core? But those are, I think, are open-ended conversations. There's certainly things that we'll tap into David and his team of other experiences that are used across the country that make sense to a business, because that's the big thing that we've done as we've developed all these incentive programs is they have to make sense. They can't just be, oh, let's come up with an idea to put money into a restaurant fund to get more restaurants. Well, if they're not going to utilize it, or if it doesn't make sense to them, they're not going to use it, and they're never going to come here anyway. So I think we have to have larger community conversations with our businesses to figure out what those tools look like and how they would use them, and are they sustainable, fiscally responsible and sustainable to the city over time.
One thing you just reminded me of, Yale University decided, frankly, it had to rescue New Haven, not completely out of the goodness of its heart. It needed New Haven. And they developed some very innovative, through trial and error, revitalization tools. One was they learned not to bring in a business, because they bring in a new business, put it on a block, and a month later it would be dead, but to bring in a block of businesses. In other words, to really develop at scale. I think that's a lesson we've all learned. But what they got very active in recruiting the coolest restaurants and pizza joints or whatever in Brooklyn that wanted to open a second location in New Haven. They really went after entrepreneurs and specific businesses. You just reminded me of this. And given everything that people have said here about what Moorhead's all about, I love the hippie younger cousin or whatever, you're clearly the kind of community that might really embrace that approach. And, you're not robbing, you're borrowing.
And I would stress too, we have the local ties to it. also really good things for the state of Minnesota, and we're starting to uncover more and more great things from, especially an entrepreneurial system. But I think that's been a partnership that we've tried to build upon over the last couple of years of trying to get more towards this community, being recognized that we can be a hub for entrepreneurs. And we're also starting to see that throughout the region of groups that have been established across the river that want to take roots in Moorhead because they see opportunities as well. So there's not just, I don't think the burden all is locally. I think there's things that already exist in the state that we can take advantage of that are probably more lucrative for the business than what we could ever give locally. But those are things that we have to continue to explore.
I'm going to jump ahead to our next slide here. Before we get to, this is our second to last slide, you know, looking at what are those key messages and takeaways. You know, you guys might get asked as members of the boards, you guys might get asked, you know, what did you hear in phase one? What are you guys doing as you start digging into developing the vision and the framework for the various pieces of the downtown plan? And so, I mean, in going through every single piece of public input and kind of what we utilized to develop the vision framework, is we developed about 6 just really high-level, easy things to talk about. And one of the things that we've heard is even, you know, from some of our developers and our existing businesses and some of the focus groups in the public meetings is building on that momentum of the recent successes. People are excited to see the development that has happened in downtown Moorhead over the past few years, and they don't want it to stop. So we really have a great opportunity coming into this plan to build on the momentum of the success, the changing incentives. The leadership is behind this plan. Second item is utilizing that downtown workforce that you already have to support that compact critical mass of destinations and housing so that we have the 3 pieces to support the downtown. So we're going to start with that already existing downtown workforce that we have to build up that compact critical mass. Popular notion, like I said, we heard it in so many different venues of our public outreach, keeping Moorhead, downtown Moorhead, authentic to Moorhead, authentic to itself. Don't try to be just like the guy across the street. Do what works for us. Looking at that vision framework, where are we at right now? If people say, where are we at in the plan? You can tell them we're working on the vision framework, which is going to guide the analysis of the various pieces for the downtown Moorhead plan, and then work into developing strategies, specific strategies in phase 3. So right now we're developing that vision framework of member land uses, transportation, open spaces, streetscaping, wayfinding, all those different pieces, parking that we talked about. So the vision framework for all those pieces before we say, okay, now let's strategize this to this specific site. That's phase 3, we're doing the vision framework. The redevelopment of the mall area site is very critical. And I'm gonna let David kind of talk about that one more time because it is a golden opportunity. You guys have some great businesses already within the mall, but this site here and the area that you have to build upon that success, it's a golden opportunity.
You know, I'm not sure if you didn't just say it, and if I haven't said it 5 times already. So if people want to ask questions, I mean, what is unique, I will say this, about Moorhead, that most downtowns are coming back across North America. You probably all know this, that has to do with our demographics and our economy, et cetera. But few of them have, what is the most valuable resource they can have is a big chunk of publicly owned land or even privately owned land with a willing partner as an owner that can form the sort of critical mass for change, and you have that. And it's a resource to be thought about very carefully. There are people there who need to thrive even more than they are today with how things change. But there are opportunities to connect to the river, to bring Central Avenue to life, to bring a lot of people downtown, to do basically anything anyone here has talked about, to bring minority businesses and new folks into downtown. It's just an amazing opportunity, and it automatically creates critical mass simply by its size and location. I hope you haven't heard this too many times now.
And the last piece is synergizing with the colleges. You know, we've had those initial discussions with them. As we kick off the public input for phase 2, we're going to do another round of surveys to talk about our vision framework. And we've actually talked about creating a survey that's just specific to the college students and asking the college students some very strategic and specific questions, you know, about what would get them into the downtown, specifically out to the college students, or, you know, just we didn't get enough feedback from the college students. When we looked at the demographics that we asked for our surveys, even though we tried to engage the colleges as much as we could, we want to get more feedback from the college students, and we want to find out more about how we can even just inform them about what the downtown has to offer already. Because there was, you know, obviously a clear disconnect there. So we want to continue that synergy with the colleges because they can make a huge impact. Questions or discussion on these key messages, key thoughts, summed up? Okay, so our last page is just kind of going over our next steps in our schedule. So you guys are one of many meetings that we have today. We are still going to do a presentation and have a discussion with Derek's Downtown Moorhead board tonight. Coming up, we would really love it, you know, since you guys can take these draft visions and frameworks home with you today. If anybody has any comments that they could send to Derek within about the next week on anything, we would love to get that stuff collected over about the next week, because we really need that time to start working through the framework for all the various pieces that we discussed that are going to be components of the plan as we prepare our public input process and launch that's going to occur at the end of January. Even though that may seem like it's a long ways away, it's really not that far away. And when we look at needing to coordinate and develop everything and have it reviewed and give time to advertise for our public input meetings and get things online. So we would love to get, you know, if you didn't already share your feedback that you have today, if you have any additional messages you'd love to share with us about any of this draft stuff that we shared with you today, if you can send it to Derek by about, you know, next week about this time, say Monday, Tuesday next week, that would be greatly appreciated. And even if you have any questions that come up, we'd love to answer them for you. Yep.
Several years ago, there was a group that would do black cities to review what they did on the river, and also railroad tracks on the Blackwood. Art forms, that's what. Have you been in discussions with the railroads on how they can improve?
That's something that we've been talking about, is how to, you know, better interact with the rail, beautify along it, anything like that. We just found out actually a little bit ago, Bob Zimmerman shared with us that they did a plan for that in 2014 that's not summarized in our existing plans because we weren't aware of it. So he said he's going to get that plan for us and share it with us, because the reason they did it is when they dead-ended some of the streets, when they closed some of the crossings with the quiet zones, they actually developed a plan for how they could better interact, especially at some of those crossings they were closing. But nothing got carried forward. So he's going to share that with us because he said it was actually a pretty great plan. So, but yeah, we've talked about that, you know, instead of it just, you know, now anybody talks about the railroad now and everybody's like, oh God, you know. And it has a story about how they got stuck by the train, but there's opportunities.
And I think too, and I applaud Chris and others, I mean, we're not afraid to ask the questions to the railroad or ask the hard questions to anybody that historically have been difficult to work with. Because if we truly believe, all of us and the residents believe this is going to create environments that's good for us and ultimately good for the railroad, I don't see any reason of stepping up and saying what's up for what we think is right, and what's going to benefit our community. So I don't think there's a caution or a timidness of having those conversations again. Same thing that we're doing with DOT right now on Main Avenue, Highway 1075 corridor studies. Most of the conversation has always been, well, DOT will never, you know, allow us to create a downtown environment. It's always going to be about traffic, but you know, just by having conversations with them, inviting them to certain things, they were at one of our focus group meetings as well. They were the ones that mentioned, you know, how do we create an environment that's better for what you're trying to do. So I think people are more flexible when you have a concise kind of message to give them as well.
So is this broadly resonating as a foundation? This isn't the plan, as a foundation? With some holes in it. You've identified a couple of things we need to. Okay.
We certainly appreciate your time and your feedback. I know Christy has sent out an email to like the staff, just trying to get a one-point conversation for comments. I'll probably just try to steal Christy's email and maybe send it out to this group. We can summarize some comments that I can just give that all in one document to the Stantec group for accessibility and ease that way. So I'll work to get that out probably tomorrow. If I won't be able to get to it today, but I'll do that certainly tomorrow morning.
Thank you guys very much.